Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Inspiring Engineers webinar. NC State College of Engineering hosted this great series, both online here as webinars, but also as a social media series as well. I'm Helene Lollis. I'm a chemical engineer from 1987. I chair the College and Alumni Relations Committee for the Engineering Foundation Board of Directors. At NC State, an engineering career is a launch point to so many types of career paths, and that's what we really want to feature in these quarterly webinars. We want to celebrate and highlight the wide range of inspiring careers that our fellow alums have pursued and continue to pursue. We're hosting great webinars like this on a quarterly basis, and then as well, I encourage you to follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow us at NC State College of Engineering and hashtag NC State ENGR. We also encourage you to share. We're going to be recording today's broadcast. Encourage you to share this with others to really help others realize all of the great connectivity and work that's going on with the College of Engineering. So there's a fantastic community of College of Engineering alumni, and we're committed to sharing great content like this and keeping you connected. So on to the main event. I am excited to bring Ben Burgess into the conversation. Ben is an inspiring engineer. He is the owner of Burgess Civil LLC in Tampa, Florida. He's a 2006 graduate in construction engineering and management, and he went on to University of Florida where he got his MBA in 2012. Burgess Civil specializes in residential and commercial construction projects, specifically clearing, grading, utilities, and road work. And in 2020, his business was named one of the 250 best businesses in Florida, which is pretty darn cool, Ben. Before stepping out on his own, he spent some time with contractors in Cary and Jacksonville and Tampa. I will tell you, I've got some questions ready for Ben, but by all means, there are a bunch of you out there. We are going to take some questions from the audience as well. Ben, I just want to thank you so much for taking some time with us and sharing your story. So glad that you're here today.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Thank you to Helene, to you and the board of directors for having me. I'm really honored to be a part of this today and excited to get to share my story with people from NC State, for a university that gave so much to me in my career so far. So
love it. Love it. Well, let's start from the beginning then. So I know that you had a teacher who encouraged you down this path, but why NC State? What attracted you to NC State? And specifically, what attracted you to civil engineering and construction?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, my parents had gotten some money from a family member for my college education. And they basically said, hey, look, if you stay in state and go to a public school, we'll pay for all of it. If you go out of state or want to go to private school, you're flipping the rest of the bill. And so I had a chemistry teacher in high school that said, hey, you're really good at math and science. You should think about engineering. And at the time, I had no idea what engineering was, but I was interested in computer science. So I looked into UNC Charlotte and NC State as possible options, in-state public schools with engineering schools, and applied to both, got an early decision to NC State, and went ahead and made the right choice to go to NC State. And kind of the rest is history from me from that point. In terms of my interest in engineering, I wanted to go into computer science to begin with. I thought that was the path that I wanted to kind of follow. I took my first couple computer science classes in Java and realized that I was not going to be the best programmer. So I thought it was time for me to go ahead and look for a pivot. And when my parents were in high school, we had relocated to the Lake Norman area, and my parents had built a home, and my dad was super handy and did a lot of work around the house and actually involved me in the project doing some really simple stuff like painting and cleanup and things. And
cleanup, there you go. That's a good gig.
Yeah. The very entry-level laborer positions, which is all I was qualified for. And I saw the general contractor, and it looked like he had a really cool job. He just showed up on the job site, told everybody what to do, had a really nice truck, and then he went ahead and took off to the next job site. And I was like, man, that looks like the best job ever. And so that was really the first thing that inspired me when I was 16 years old to be interested in construction as a pivot point when I decided to move out of computer science and look into a different form of engineering and civil.
Interesting. Any second thoughts just watching where the technology industry has gone?
I don't know. I have too much fun doing what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. My mom is a teacher and my dad's an aircraft mechanic. So we kind of came up blue collar, and I'm really I really enjoy getting to employ a lot of blue collar individuals in what we do. I find a lot of kind of gratitude in what we do. And I don't know, I really wouldn't change my path. It's been fun working in family owned construction businesses and then having the opportunity to run my own for the past 8 years. At this point, I can't say that I would trade it.
That's good. That's good. So tell us about Burgess Civil. So I've heard you say that you kind of saw an unfilled need, but give us a sense of the business, what you do, and scope and scale, and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so when I went back to grad school, I was still working full time in Jacksonville, and during that time period, I moved to Tampa to go work for a large scale contractor in this market. And this was around 2012, 2013. I kind of started to learn about economic cycles, and we had been coming through the Great Recession, and I hadn't really had a raise in many years. I was kind of working for free, more or less, just to get my experience. And I started to see the company I was at, the business really started to take off, and they were turning away a ton of work. And I started asking myself the question, I'm like, who's doing this work? Like, where's the opportunity here? There's got to be an opportunity out there somewhere. And so I started kind of trying to learn the market in Tampa Bay a little bit more, and realized, there was kind of a mix of some really small contractors that were kind of like, maybe came up as an operator through the trade or just kind of mom and pop type businesses. And then there were a few really, really big businesses, and there was nobody really in between. And so for me, I looked at that as an opportunity. I said, well, there's got to be somebody doing these mid-sized projects that my employer doesn't want to do. Maybe I can go out and do them. And so when I decided to break out on my own in June of 2014, it was really just myself and office space. And I went out and I looked for some work, and I didn't have any employees. I didn't have any equipment or anything. And I ended up picking up a job through another contractor. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I need to run an ad on Craigslist, and hired a few guys and went out and rented some equipment and just started from scratch doing small projects. I'll never forget the first Friday when I accidentally forgot to process payroll and my phone blew up at like 5 a.m, everyone asking where their money was. But so I've literally worn every hat in my business. And, so we just kind of step by step took the approach of, trying to target projects that we could be profitable on, that we could add value on. And my goal from the beginning was, even though at one point I had no employees, and then I had 5 employees and then 10, and it kind of grew from there. I always wanted my customers to feel like they were working with a company that had 500 employees or 300 employees or some large scale. I wanted that same level of professionalism that I learned at other businesses, and that I learned through the engineering field that I began to study at NC State. And so that was the differentiator for us, was being that mid-sized company that could take on those projects that the big guys didn't want, but we could add a much more level of professional value than the small guys could. So we've been fortunate enough now to grow to about 130 employees. And now I'd say we're kind of taking on some bigger jobs in our market, but I still feel like we really kind of fit that mid-sized niche.
So what's that look like? What's a typical project for you?
Yeah, so we've done, I would say, like our minimum size right now, we do about $1 million site work and contract is about as low as we want to go. And that's just kind of a function of the market dynamics here in Tampa. It's a really hot market. It's been one of the fastest growing populations in the US ever since COVID hit. The secret's kind of out between the Bucks and the Lightning and the Riverwalk and all the fun stuff we have going on down here. A lot of people want to move here. So there's a need for housing, infrastructure, and everything that goes with it. So the biggest jobs we've done are around 8 million. We're pretty close to negotiating a $10 million job right now. Our average project size is about 2 to 4 million. Last year, we did about 40 million in revenue. So we have usually somewhere between 15 and 20 active projects at a time going on. But these could be sites anywhere from 10 to 100 acre size sites that we're developing, start to finish, land clearing, earthwork, underground utilities, road building, commercial and residential. And now we're starting to do some DOT work as well.
So 10 years, what was that ramp like? You say you were 40 last year. What highs and lows,
Yeah.
Steady? What does that look like?
No, we pretty much doubled every year. You can probably see this football behind me right here. This is the Tampa Bay Business Journal Fast 50 award. We were the second fastest growing company in Tampa Bay of any type, and the fourth fastest growing company in Florida. That was like our third year in business. And basically we doubled every year in business besides the COVID year. We went from like 21 to 23, and then we jumped to 40 after that. So we found a lot of demand for the level of service that we provide. And so that's led to a lot of repeat business. And so we've really gone out and kind of pushed the limits with our growth. And I like the challenge of growing because it's always a different problem that you have to solve. And again, that goes back to engineering and learning problem solving, whether it's business, whether it's engineering, whether it's a technical issue on a job site. I've got a lot of really good construction managers and engineers that work for me now, but I still jump in and get involved in some of those things from day to day. But yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride so far.
Love it. So you've already echoed back to your engineering degree. I love that you talk about grit and you talk about how you feel like you learned some of that grit at NC State. What is it that you think about your NC State experience that how did that help you to be where you are today?
Yeah, so for me, I was probably like most engineering students. I didn't study in high school. I didn't really learn those habits in high school. I just thought, I'll show up at NC State and this is going to be really easy. Well, I kind of got punched in the mouth and realized that wasn't going to be the case for me. I think that is for some people in the engineering program, but not for myself. I actually, my first, you go through those weed out classes early on in the civil engineering program, and statics was one of the first ones. And I think I made a C or a D my first time around. Either way, they didn't move me forward in the program, so I had to retake it. And so when I got back, I said, shoot, I really got to get serious about this. And I sat on the front row when I was retaking statics and ended up sitting with a couple guys. I don't know if they're on the call or not, but Charles and Derek are their names, and they're still good lifelong friends now. And I realized, you know what, I'm going to hitch my wagon to these guys, and they seem really smart and they're figuring all this stuff out. And so we started studying together, doing homework together, preparing for tests together and all those kinds of things. And I always joke with them that my first job in management was managing them, because if they didn't get their stuff done, I wasn't going to get my stuff done. Yeah. I think they got tired of hearing my voice sometimes, and they're like, all right, let's get this done so we can get him to leave us alone. So, but, I really had to grit my way through. I had a below 3.0 GPA at one point and had to work to bring that up. And I graduated above a 3.0, and it just wasn't easy work for me. I learned a ton, but I had to sink a ton into it. And I learned a lot about time management. I learned a lot about, just dedicating yourself to something. I learned a lot about working in teams. And if it wasn't for the engineering program at NC State to challenge me to learn all those things, I'm not sure if or when I would have learned them.
Favorite course, least favorite course?
Least favorite course was hydraulics. I think I dropped it once, and then I ended up taking it a second time, and I got a little easier professor and got a passing grade. Oh man, favorite course. Geez. I'd probably have to say my capstone class in construction management. That was what really led me to be like, hey, I definitely made the right choice here. I'm happy with the work that I'm going into. And it was really exciting to, just to kind of see that hard work pay off in the capstone course, I think.
Together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've talked specifically about the engineering aspect of it, but today you're a business owner, you're a business leader, and you're an industry expert. Talk a little bit about what you think the NC State experience, how did it prepare you for all of that, which is obviously outside the bounds of hydraulics?
Yeah, thankfully. So for me, I knew I wanted to go the construction route, but I think that's one of the beautiful things about the civil engineering program at NC State is that you've got so many different lanes you can go in. You can go water resources, transportation, construction, structural, you name it. And for me, even though I wanted to be on the construction side, I worked so hard to get through engineering school and pass the fundamentals of engineering. I said, I've really got to get my PE. There's not a lot of people on the construction side that have their PE. So hopefully I can use that to kind of set myself apart. And I joke with a lot of my employees, kind of half-heartedly, but I say, even though we're the contractor, we have to be smarter than the engineer in a lot of cases, because we have to be able to problem solve. They have to permit it, but we have to actually go build it. And there's a more difficult side of that from the permitting side to being on construction. And I think having my engineering license helps set my business apart a little bit. I've heard other people say that in the market. And so versus a traditional construction management program, I think having the engineering touch on it in NC State's program just adds that higher level of quality to it. To really help people be able to speak the same language. When I market my company, a lot of our referral source are the design engineers. And I have that conversation with them, say, look, I can speak the same language. I've got my stamp just like you do. I work just as hard for it, just like you did. And we're going to help add value by helping you solve these problems. If there's something that we don't know from a permitting standpoint, how to construct the best way, we want to add value that way on the contractor side with an engineering focus.
So what then, when did you know it was the right time to pursue a business degree, and what motivated you to pursue a business degree after the engineering degree?
Yeah, so I worked at a family-owned business in Jacksonville for about 6 years, and they had been in business for over 40 years. And I had a lot of respect for the people that I worked for there. But sometimes I felt like we were successful in spite of ourselves a little bit. And I thought that there wasn't really anyone there that could mentor me from a business standpoint. They could mentor me from a technical standpoint, from a construction management standpoint, but I really wanted to understand how to run a business. And during the recession, we had another contractor fold up shop, and actually he brought all his work to us, and he kind of became a mentor to me, and he helped me learn the business side of it. But I said, you know what, I need to continue to push myself to learn even more, to get outside opinions, because you don't know what you don't know. And so that was around the time, my workload was pretty heavy at work because, in 2010, most of the expensive older people got laid off. I was only 4 years into my career, just got my PE. They dumped a bunch of projects on me and said, hey, figure it out. And I was up for the task, but, I wanted to, challenge myself to learn the business side of things more, because I felt like I had to be more of a Swiss Army knife to have my own business when that came to marketing, accounting, organizational behavior, all those different things that I now deal with more than I deal with on the engineering side day to day. So I wrote my first business plan when I was doing my master's program. And that was kind of the launch point for me to really visualize what it was going to be like for me to start my own business. And had I not gone and challenged myself to that experience while working full time, I don't know that I would have been ready, for the challenge, and also to grow this business as quickly as I have.
So contrast, because I was tickled to find out that you don't consider yourself a particularly handy person. Contrast how stepping into the leadership role that you have folks who do lots of things. And you said there was a time where you could do any job in the business, but now that you've grown to the scale that you've had, contrast what your day is like versus your team's.
Yeah, I should preface that if it comes to running a bulldozer, excavator, or laying pipe, I could not have done those jobs ever.
Okay.
But if it's but if it's in the office, I can do it. My dad is one of the most mechanically inclined people that I've ever met. Whenever my sister and I were kids, and we said, "Hey, Dad, we want a trampoline," he would just go build it. He was just so
I
handy.
had that same dad. Yeah.
Yeah, and it totally passed me by because I wanted to play video games. I wanted to be on the computer. He would kick me out of the house and make me go play outside in the neighborhood. Luckily in North Carolina, lots of fun woods to run around and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that part just missed me. I just didn't have interest in it. He was always rebuilding cars, and he'd be like, "Come in the garage. I want to show you this or teach you this." And I'd be like, "I'll be here as long as I need to, and then I'm out of here. I want to go do something else." So, luckily I was book smart, and I had my mom's a teacher, and she kept me very studious, and I'm thankful for that. Oh shoot, I'm thankful for that. But yeah, the mechanically inclined piece just kind of jumped over me a little bit. I like to joke with everybody that I can barely change a light bulb, which unfortunately is true. But luckily I have a lot of very talented, sharp people that have come up through the trade in my business that may not have formal education, but they're still some of the smartest people that you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I get to work side by side with them every day, because even though I've got a formal education and engineering degree, I learn from them every day still.
Love it. Love it. So a question came in from the audience. What motivates you? What keeps you motivated to keep growing the business, operating at a high level? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
I always think about myself when I was 22 years old, and when I graduated from NC State and I got my first job, and just how driven I was and motivated to make something of myself and to create something for myself and my future family and in the industry. And I love creating those opportunities for our workforce. That's like the most gratifying thing that we can do. So I love hiring people that I see some of myself in when I was 22, whether they're construction management students, engineering students. And I love growing the company to give them an opportunity to grow their careers so they don't have to go somewhere bigger or do something else to do it. I want to create the opportunity for them here so that they can grow their career in what I think is a really beneficial workplace. And the same thing goes for our field. There's kind of two separate elements to the business between the office and the field. And again, like I mentioned, I came up blue collar, and I know what it's like to be blue collar and live that lifestyle. And I know a lot of our people. I could provide opportunities for them to have a long-term career at my business and hopefully grow with us, and hopefully have people that retire from my business at some point in the future. We're not quite there yet as a newer business, but that's what we're working towards. That's what I'm working towards. That's what motivates me every day to get up and keep going.
It's very cool. So getting some great questions from the audience. I want to pepper in a couple. You mentioned about how powerful it is to interact with students. Question from a student, I presume. What's something you would recommend that you did when you were in college, and what is something that you would not recommend?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah. Be careful. Yeah.
Take as much advantage of being around brilliant, hardworking people as you can at a place like NC State, right? I mean, so many brilliant professors that are at that university. It's such a high level institution. I learned from so many people, and you don't realize how much people are willing to pour in you if you're inquisitive and you'll ask questions. I had so many professors that I still look back. Actually, when I was preparing for this talk, I looked up one of my professors from NC State and I sent him a message on LinkedIn, and now he actually lives in the Tampa Bay area.
How cool is that?
Funny enough, and hopefully we're going to connect at some point after this. So, just be inquisitive, ask questions. The worst question is the one you don't ask. And so never be afraid in that classroom to raise your hand and say, hey, professor, I don't actually understand this. I need a little more help, or attend office hours. Just put in that extra work, because it really, really, really pays off. There's classes, I think back, like geotechnical engineering, that at the time I was like, dirt, like, why do I need to study this? Why do I need to measure this? Why do I need to know about optimum moisture and all these things? And then I went and did it for a career, and I was like, man, I really wish I paid more attention to that class. So that's the big thing. Just be inquisitive, be willing to work hard, and the rest will take care of itself. There's a lot of things at NC State. It's a big campus. There's sports, there's parties, there's fraternities, sororities, there's all kinds of distractions, right? So, I think the biggest thing for me was like learning that balance. My parents weren't the strictest parents growing up. And I thought, oh, I'll go to NC State and I'll be fine with all this freedom. I got to figure it out. I want to study. I can go do whatever. I can play video games with my sweet mates and, go to the basketball games, football games. But at some point I realized, I gotta start to manage my time here, because I can't do all this stuff, and I can't be out every weekend and then just think, oh, I'll just show up and take the test on Monday and be fine. So I really at some point started to treat it like a job, where I tried to stack my classes on certain days so that I could spend the rest of my time on campus studying. And I treated it like an 8 to 5. So my time was outside of the 8 to 5, but I stayed on campus 8 to 5 to do my presentations, my group projects, my homework. So, NC State's an amazing experience. Wouldn't trade it for anything. Diehard Wolfpack fan, for better or for worse. But you have to learn how to prioritize your time and focus what, is going to be truly beneficial to you long term, which is, getting that degree and getting that first job.
Yeah. Love it. And you like so beautifully skated around and didn't say anything there that you regret saying, which is fantastic. So we're getting a bunch of great questions coming in, which I absolutely love. I'm going to merge a couple of them. So we've had a question about biggest mistake you made as a business owner, and how you learned from it. We've also had a question, what surprised you most about running a business? So when you look back over this fantastic trajectory that you've had, what is it that stands out that you either had to recover from or rethink?
Yeah. I mean, I think the surprising thing for me is when I wrote my business plan, I'd never anticipated the business would grow as fast as it would. I picked a good economic cycle to get in. We had a good target market. We treated people the right way. That led to repeat business. So, I mean, I'm thankful that it's grown the way it has. I did not anticipate it growing this quickly. But again, I'm thankful for it. And there's a lot of conditions outside myself that have led to that. The biggest mistake I've made, and I continue to make it over and over, I would say is mostly with people. Business all boils down to people, and I've hired some of the wrong people in many occasions. And I've made a lot of hiring mistakes, especially when I was starting out. I think, I didn't know how to hire field people. That was never really in my purview at my previous jobs. I was more client interface and that kind of thing. And so I made a lot of hiring mistakes in the field, and I didn't really know how to cut people loose quickly enough when they weren't right for the company, or right for me, or right for whatever we were trying to accomplish at that time. And I had to get really comfortable with firing people. And, we kind of changed our motto at one point to we hire quick and we fire quick, because in this limited hiring market, if someone walks through the door, especially in the field, if you don't hire them, then there's a good chance they're going to walk down the street and you won't see them again. So for me, we've made a lot of hiring mistakes, but I'm trying to learn through different methods and cultural cultural programs and things like that, how we can better identify people who are right for our culture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. They always, you're absolutely right. They used to tell us as business owners, hire slow, fire fast, but boy, you hire slow today.
Not in this market.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard. So great question around environmental sustainability, and how do you as a business owner balance running a profitable business and keeping an eye focused there as well?
Yeah. So in site work, it's a little bit more challenging. Like if you look at the vertical trades, there's LEED certification for buildings, and there's something called green globes now. There's a lot of different ways you can certify a building with recycled materials. For us, it's a little more challenging in land development because a lot of times we're starting with a raw piece of land and we're developing into something that's going to be built on. One of the things that we have done to try to make our company more environmentally friendly is I've got another property around the corner from my office where I used to operate out of, and we actually stockpile concrete from our job sites there. And once we stockpile enough concrete, we bring a big crusher in and we crush all the concrete and we process it into road base. So basically it's called crushed concrete recycled base is what we use in Florida. And so we build a lot of our roads on it. So that's our way. That's one of the major ways that we can kind of try to do things from an environmental perspective to reuse those materials instead of just throwing away, or they end up in a landfill, which isn't good for the environment. So there's a lot of things that we're doing on that front. We have to take a ton of environmental sensitivity in Florida because we work around a lot of wetlands, a lot of natural areas that can't be disturbed. So I've got a full-time environmental and safety director on my team that is very cognizant of that. And we kind of try to make it a top priority along with safety. So those are kind of some of the small things that, that we try to do to try to be as, environmentally friendly as we can. With heavy equipment, there's only so much you can do right now because, they're all fueled by diesel. I do have some hybrid trucks in our fleet, so trying to kind of reduce our carbon footprint a little bit there by hopefully going more electric as time goes on, but it's kind of a work in progress with availability and, return on investment.
So your comment both around environmental sustainability and even talking about safety, when you reflect back onto your time at NC State, clearly the mathematic aspect was there around all things civil engineering, but do you feel that you had an introduction to environmental issues, safety issues as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think, the nice thing was we had some adjunct professors in the construction management program who worked on job sites, and they would take us to job sites occasionally. And first thing you do, put on your boots, your hard hat, your vest, your safety glasses. It was step one, day one. And so that was definitely ingrained in us early on. I think also I remember back on some of my transportation courses, trying to, learn about, how things can be designed with the environmental footprint, being the key element or key factor to around the design for the particular project, especially learning about highway projects in North Carolina and, how they had to choose the path, that disturb the least amount of the natural environment as possible. So yeah, I think there's definitely a touch on that. I'm sure there's a lot more on it now in the coursework than there was 15 years ago when I was last there. But it was certainly something that was discussed and was definitely top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love that kind of frames it out. So, so I've heard you say you're pretty comfortable with risk, and being a business owner myself, I always enjoy having that sort of dialogue and understanding like what motivates. We've had several questions around what causes you to start, what makes you feel comfortable being start and to start and go out on your own in that way. So, what's that mean to be comfortable with risk, and how does that show up every day for you?
Yeah, so I would say I grew up pretty risk adverse. I was not a risk taker, not the most daring kid or anything like that. And I shared a story with Helene offline about actually in one of my construction management programs at NC State, where our professor said, "Hey, who in this room likes to gamble? If you like to gamble, raise your hand." Of course, I didn't raise my hand. I was like, "I'm a broke college kid. I don't have any money to gamble. I don't like it. I don't do it anyway. I don't know anything about it." And he said, "If you didn't raise your hand, you're going into the wrong line of work." And that was one of those quotes that I've never forgotten. I'm like, what, how does that make sense? What are you talking about? And, he kind of explained to us, he said, "Hey, when you're a contractor, you are gambling every single day. You take on lump sum contracts, your CM at risk. The profitability is all on how you run your business. And there's even more risk and more reward on the site work side of things, even more so than the building trades, because we work on different margins." And that was one thing that stuck with me when I went to work for other people. I didn't really, I was trying to, still always thinking, that was always in the back of my mind. And I realized once I started managing projects and having to answer for the financial reporting on projects and things like that, hey, I'm actually gambling with this person's money every single day. Because if I don't if I don't get that change order done, if I don't bid this job properly, if I don't line this crew out, if I don't answer a question they have in the field quickly enough, that's all losing money. It's all lost production. And so I got, I was fortunate enough to be able to make some of my mistakes with other people's money. And then eventually I had to go put my own money at play to really take that risk. And at that point, I just looked at it and said, you know what, there's got to be a percentage of markup or margin that offsets that risk. And sometimes that gets you the job, sometimes it doesn't. But reality is that is what you're doing every single day when it comes to the construction side of things, is you are gambling when you're working on a lump sum contract, because it's on you to make budget or not make budget. It's on you and your team every day, in and out.
And so now, do you gamble? You have more money.
I mean, if I'm in Vegas with a couple friends, of course, I'm going to hit the blackjack tables. There's the Hard Rock right around the corner from my office here, but I can't say that I frequent it that often unless it's something social. So I do enough gambling day to day, so I don't need to lose any more sleep.
So what's happening today for you business wise, between supply chain issues, the economy doing what it's doing? What are your most pressing challenges today?
Inflation is the biggest thing. We have dealt with massive price increases on existing contracts, and trying to get those costs passed along to our customers has been a challenge. In Tampa Bay, I think the Wall Street Journal put out an article 12 months, over a 12-month period, inflation went up 8%, which was the highest of any area in the country. So I pretty much across the board already gave everybody this year 10% raises to help them keep up with their cost of living. But we have to be more cognizant about our production and our man hours and everything else and our overtime now to help offset that. So it's weird, because I worked through the recession and it was just like everybody was bidding for free, basically no profit, taking their equipment out of the job in some cases. And now all of a sudden I'm in this opposite, like white hot market. And it's like, you're trying to figure out a whole different issue with, can your contracts keep up with the inflation? Just like, every person that is employee, can your income keep up with the inflation to continue to pay your bills? So it's a really odd dynamic that I did not anticipate myself being in. But, when fuel goes up to $5 a gallon in diesel and my pipes doubled and my labor's going up, that percentage, it's a very different set of challenges than I anticipated. I'm trying to navigate my way through.
And what about supply chain?
Supply chain has been tough. We've had to pre-purchase a lot of our materials for job sites. Luckily, we have a couple acres at our office where we can stockpile material. Sometimes we can stockpile on job sites. We just have to be more proactive in everything that we do. Something that used to be a 48-hour turnaround is now a week turnaround. Some of our longer lead items, that like precast, used to be 8 weeks. Now it's 12 to 16. So it boils down to communicating with our clients, setting expectations with our clients, and trying to plan further ahead. That's the only thing that we can do with supply chain, because concrete, for instance, sometimes you can't get it for 2 or 3 weeks, and we need to be able to pour, inverts and structures and everything else. So definitely a different set of challenges these days with inflation.
So we talked about your technical background. We talked about business savvy perhaps being enhanced both by being inside organizations, but also your MBA. I'm going to key on the word client that you've used a few times. How did you get comfortable being the front face with clients? Because you probably didn't get a lot of exposure to that during your undergrad time.
No, yeah. And really, as I started my career, I worked more back office, like in estimating and putting proposals together. And I didn't get a ton of face-to-face interface with the client. So I remember it being really intimidating when you go out and you start to meet these clients, or someone that your boss has told you about, whether good stories or sometimes bad stories. And it can be intimidating earlier in your career to do that face-to-face. Some advice people have given me sometimes is just, pick up the phone. Email or text isn't always best. Let's get that face-to-face communication or verbal communication. I had to learn it as I went on. It wasn't the most comfortable thing for me. Really being in sales wasn't the most comfortable thing for me, but really at this point in my career, I'm the marketing person. I'm the business development person for my company. So I have to be comfortable with that. And it's just something that kind of grew with experience, where early in your career, you're unsure of, am I making the right decision? Do I know how to answer this question properly? Some of those things you're just not going to know. Even if you have a good engineering background, you have to come with experience. And I think as time goes on and you put enough projects under your belt, you get more comfortable answering those questions. And I think now I'm more comfortable just saying, I honestly have no clue. I don't know. And that's okay, because that's the only way to learn, and early in my career, maybe I wasn't as comfortable saying, hey, I don't know, because I wanted my client to feel comfortable that I was adding value for them.
So there have been a couple of questions coming on that I'm just really glad you have to answer and I don't. But that is, as a business owner, how do you find balance? How do you decompress? How do you find time to do all of the things that you want to do and spend time with family and friends and be as successful as you are?
What I always tell young people is something they'll learn at some point in their career is you cannot determine when your day is going to end, but you can determine when it's going to start. And so I've actually been training a lot of my people here on this concept of priming, which is essentially like, what do you need to do to prime yourself to be the most effective and efficient version of yourself for your workday? And so for me, like this morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. and I played basketball for 2 hours at a pickup game at the YMCA to get my heart rate up and just clear my head a little bit. Sometimes I'll ride my bike, sometimes I'll go to workout classes, but for me, the morning is the key. I try to hydrate. I try to get my heart rate up. You got to burn stress off, because if you don't, when you have millions of dollars coming and going on bids and pay applications and collections and everything else, it can chew away at you if you don't have ways to kind of relieve that stress. So the thing for me is taking advantage of that early morning and, trying to get up early, and early bird gets the worm, trying to be prepared to, be ahead of everybody else for the day, whether that's setting yourself physically, whether it's getting ahead on work, studying, whatever it may be, but take advantage of those mornings. That's hard as a young person, but eventually you realize, or at least for me, I realized that was the way I had to do it to be successful.
Yeah. Any guess on how many hours you work in a week?
I'm like 50 to 55. Ironically, working for other people, I probably worked more than I do now, because I've been able to build a really good team and delegate to give myself the flexibility. But it wasn't always that way. When I started my business, I was 60, 70 hours some weeks, Saturday, Sunday, working on estimates and things like that. Eventually it doesn't become sustainable and you're just going to burn yourself out. So I think I become more effective with the less hours that I put in to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the big goal? Like, what's the thing that you're not going to be satisfied until you've done?
Yeah, I think like when I wrote my business plan and I got into business, and you think about, these publications with the Fast 50 and growing business and all this, you're always thinking about revenue, top line growth, those kinds of things. I think what I've learned is a better challenge for me and my company is being able to truly delegate to my team and my tasks and create a data-driven business where my opinion doesn't matter anymore. Because without data, that's all it is. It's just an opinion, right? And I think my engineering background kind of drives me towards that, of wanting to build a data-driven business, because we need to decentralize our decision-making process. And ultimately, if I want to pivot into other interests or other businesses or try to start something else up someday, I need this business to run without me. And ultimately, that's my goal. Whatever revenue we're at, doesn't matter. I just want us to be profitable. I want to have a good, sustainable team. I want them to have the data at their fingertips to make those decisions, where I don't always have to be the person involved to make that final call. So for me, as a true trying to be a CEO and entrepreneur, if I don't build something with enterprise value that way, where it is a decentralized decision-making process where I've empowered my team, I don't think I would have fully done my job.
And what's the exit strategy? What do you want to do? Will you sell it? Will you pass it on? Where will you go?
I just have one child. I have a daughter. She's 6 years old. You can probably see her in the pictures here behind me. She's more into art and dance. I'm getting her into golf a little bit. I don't know that she's going to be in construction, so I don't want family to be any part of a succession plan. I've kicked around some different things like an employee stock option plan, an ESOP. If there's a strategic opportunity at some point to exit, maybe. But quite honestly, I'd rather create a good place where young engineers and construction managers can come work here. We build a good culture, and it can continue on beyond me, whether I still have ownership in it or whether I don't. But my goal is really for the business to continue beyond myself, and whatever that is, market timing wise, an opportunity in my life, I'm not sure yet, but I guess it'll present itself when it's time. So, yeah. But for now, I'm having too much fun and grinding along, so I'm just going to keep doing that and see where it takes me.
I love it. I mean, it's incredible what you've built, and I hope you're really proud of it. Those of us who are on today are all people who are inspired by NC State and inspired by great engineering. When you think about engineering, when you think about NC State, what is it that's inspiring to you about the future of engineering?
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit offline, but I think about a couple of things related to that. NC State engineering degree. At the time I went, it was about $10,000 a year. So my education cost $40,000. My first job out of school, I made $55,000. So there's immediate return on investment for an in-state engineering degree at NC State. I'd highly recommend it to anybody. There's pretty much 100% job placement in any economic climate, whether you have to go into the public market or the private market. I interned with the Department of Transportation when I was in undergrad. I decided I wanted to go to the private route instead because the money was better at that time, obviously. And so there's opportunity in either side of public or private sector. But ultimately, it's just that when you think about civil engineering, like I touched on earlier, you've got water resources, you've got structural, transportation, construction, all these things. They're all infrastructure related commodities, I guess. And what it boils down to is that if you look at our infrastructure in the US, a lot of it's 100 years old or older. So there's always going to be federal highway projects. You've got people like Elon Musk with the Boring Company now looking for ways to solve transportation issues. I just think there's unlimited runway in this industry for people to succeed, to start their own businesses, to grow their careers. To me, it's just boundless. And to me, that was one of the things that attracts me to civil engineering and should attract anybody that's looking for a career path. Just the endless opportunity that's going to be out there for our lifetimes to come. So.
I love it. So Ben, I mean, I feel like you've accomplished so much. I love how you bring the technical aspects together with the business aspects with your passion. I'm also tickled by the fact somewhere communications must have mixed in pretty well because you seem to have a pretty good gift of gab in the midst of all of that as well. I have loved this time with you. My favorite phrase was one of your first ones, and that was how you consider yourself to be a Swiss Army knife. I love that. I'm totally stealing that. I think that's it's powerful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and your thoughts. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the folks who were on. I will say we've done a fantastic job getting lots of questions from the audience. And I love that you just rolled with it. We were all prepared, but you didn't need to be prepared. You just rolled with what we had. So we want to hear everybody's story around, you are all inspiring engineers to us. And we're so excited to have folks on the line today. So we have made this, in addition to the webinar series, we've got our social media posts as well. So be sure to follow NC State College of Engineering and hashtag NC State ENGR. Our next webinar like this is going to be in August, so be watching on the lookout for that. And thanks so much to everybody here for joining in and for sharing and commenting. We're going to make this recording available to everyone and would love for you all to share it with your networks. Ben, fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing the time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to give back to the university. And if anybody wants to connect with me offline, if anybody has further questions, the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me on there. I'm always happy to experience share, always happy to try to find or provide opportunity for anybody who's looking for it. So again, I'm very visible, very easy to communicate with. So if anybody's interested in chatting more offline, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn.
Love it, Ben. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Helene. It's been a pleasure.